And Harvey, you brought up carrier command, and this is one of my favorites as well. Being able to equip missiles on your ship and have it fly out over the ocean, and just having that big carrier that was like kind of your central hub. What did you see in that kind of inspired you?
So can we have an experiment? Would you guys mind raising your hand if you played Carrier Command? Wow.
Yeah, that's more than I thought.
So this game was mind-blowing for the time. It was all polygonal graphics, just like flat shaded. There were no textures on them. And you started at one end of an island chain, and the enemy started at the other end of an island chain. And the story was some company had a big, powerful aircraft carrier that would go through the world, like hitting, building supply bases for resources, for oil or whatever. And they built a brand new version. This was a carrier. They had a badass carrier that could be operated by one guy, right? And they built a new one that was AI controlled. And then, of course, it went evil. And so they took you and put you in the old one and put you up against the AI one and started it opposite. And it's a thin story, but it was somehow powerful. And the world was running out of resources. And anyway, you could declare any base, any island you got to, you could make it a supply base, a defense base, or a raw materials base with oil derricks and such. And all you tried to do was like build a supply chain and eventually destroy the other carrier many different ways, right? Like either cutting off his supply line so he just ran out of gas, or fighting him openly, whatever. But it was like amazing because you could either camera from the carrier, just like cruising along slowly, or you could launch a fighter plane and camera from that and like look around at your ship and circle it. It was all full contiguous 3D. Or you could like launch an amphibious vehicle, roll it along, roll it up onto the bank of the island, deploy the base that you wanted, or go to an enemy base and before you got wiped out, deploy a virus into his headquarters to take over the island. Like just switching that camera around, and like sometimes you had to make these interesting decisions, like your little fighter plane is at the very edge of what it could do and you wanted to see where the enemy carrier was, and if you could get a glimpse of where it was at, you maybe could swing the game, right? But the screen starts to get staticky because the fighter plane is right at the edge of the communications distance, and you know it's going to ditch and you're going to lose it in a minute. But you just keep going for a second, and then the screen goes blank, and it was chilling. Your view was back at the carrier. I mean, this was in like 1986 or something.
Yeah, it was
1987. It was like these guys took a huge leap forward in terms of like coherency and contiguous space and immersion, for lack of a better term.
What are these guys doing now?
I don't know. I hope they're all
of
rich and retired.
It was kind of like a weird anomaly at the time. Like it was just this game that had so much choice in it, and that's what a lot of these games we see today. All of your games offer a certain degree of choice in how you want to play the game. Obviously, other games like the Ultima series is one that you guys have brought up a lot. Do you guys want to talk about that and where the inspiration is there?
Yeah, so for me what's incredible in Ultima, and it was kind of the same with Ultima Underworld, was that every object, every character somehow was not faked. There was a real existence. So characters were on the little patrol schedule. At night they would go to bed. They would open shutters if you close them. They would, lit up lights if you douse them. Make bread, etc. And then every object, like a key, would be a real, it would be an object that you can actually carry. And sometimes it's a useless object, but you still carry it around. And to be honest, like games like Fallout, they do that too. It's like they have all this junk that you can carry. It's like totally pointless. You don't know really why you're doing it, but it's cool, right? Because it feels real. It feels like, hey, I want to carry some junk around. That's it. So just let me do it. And then, so where it really became powerful for me was that, because of course, like when you give those tools to the level designers, they're going to use it. They're going to make it like, oh, actually, those objects, if I place this object, given that there's a system where I can actually move the objects around, I could make it that if I position this, this specific rock in this specific, above this specific, sign over there, then it casts a demon, it creates a demon, for example, or whatever. It's like it solves a puzzle. And so then they integrated the systems into the gameplay, and use that to make puzzles, and that was awesome because then it feels like everything was reintegrated. and every rule was very cohesive. So that's for me what was so powerful about this game, is to feel there.
Marcus or Matthew?
Agreed.
We'll shift gears here a little bit. Marcus, you brought up obviously one of the most iconic games ever, Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
How is that inspiring Resistance?
You know, to Resistance, it's gonna be a rough one. No, I think it is inspiring in the same way that we were talking about Doom and looking for the secrets. Like, you know, I was at that age where you had nothing better to do than play Super Mario and jump down every gap that you know should kill you, but behold, a secret. Like that was the thing, was you scoured. You know, I mean, you had to find, like, there's invisible pixels. There's invisible pixels? I can jump up and hit an invisible, like, we spent hours and hours. There's probably like a lot of my childhood that could have been used effectively, I guess, but that was spent that way. And I feel like every game since then has spoken to me in that, you know, much like you were just talking about, you do things differently to try to. I remember in GTA how many times, like, I'm going to steal a bus and just block this guy's exit, and now we'll start the mission, and then lo and behold, you just take him out and you feel super smart. And then for whatever reason, a lot of game designers tend to think in terms of how do we make it hard, and then they take that out and they reset missions and things like that, and it's like, that's what I loved, guys, come on. So maybe that's how it's inspired Resistance, is we're just trying to let players play the game they want to play it. We don't want you to just sit there and try to figure out what the intended weapon or situation or way of attacking is. It's like, here's your palette, go paint your masterpiece. We've given you kind of the you know, paint by numbers set, but go nuts.
Another game that's been brought up a lot is HalfLife. Anybody want to speak to the influence that's had on your careers?
You know, we're one of the, I'll just speak to one of the small things, but there's obviously a lot of things about HalfLife, just the way they handle everything from the design and the storytelling. And then specifically with the storytelling, that idea that you don't necessarily have to take control away from the player. When you're following Alex into the little airlock before you play with Dog for the first time, it's all you. You're moving through, she's talking to you, she backs up, she hits the button. You don't have to. I remember just thinking that one day, you don't have to make everything a cinematic. Not that cinematics are bad. You can tell a story effectively through cinematic moments, but I thought that was really powerful and interesting, the way they handled the characters. So that's one small thing.
I think going back to Half-Life 1, the credit sequence was phenomenal. That you were riding in this tram and you were learning everything you needed to learn as you move forward, and seeing the play spaces you would eventually get to, and just seeing the depth of this base. And then you know, it felt just so real, and it was such an innovative way at the time to do a credit sequence. It was amazing.
Going back to Matthew, what you were saying about just being able to talk to characters and walk around and do that, that's kind of become the standard now. Like, pretty much every game that I play now, like, that's how you interact with characters. Like, if you want to turn your back on them, you can. You know, if you want to walk away, you can. But it's just like this immersion level that's there now that makes you feel like you're in this world. You're not seeing like a cutscene or something like that. And the animations are just as beautiful as they used to be when we had these CG cutscenes. And it's just kind of tying it all together, not bringing you out of that world anymore. And that seems to be like one of the big things that's happening in games now, is just keeping you grounded in that experience.
You know, one thing that's interesting about that, I think of developers, there's some fear about doing it that way. What if they turn away? What if they move? What are they going to break? Wait, we spent all this time animating. Our lip sync is cool. Look at this character. There's almost a fear by the artists and even the designers about moving to that. At least we had it. Or is this going to work? And then we just had to trust. Wait, what they're saying is interesting enough. It's short or it's long enough. It's just right. We just have to do a better job at keeping the player engaged. And instead of being afraid of that, we just embraced it and kind of went with it. I think we have a ways to go at id and what we're doing with Rage, but it was a conscious decision that we were worried about. Like, are people going to sit there and listen? And then what if they don't? Is that so bad?
And And Marcus, you brought up Out of This World right before we talked here, and that kind of threw me back. Like I hadn't thought of that game in a while. And what an amazing game! What about that was inspirational for you?
Well, first of all, it was amazing that the story was basically you're a professor who shows up at your science lab, and the computer identifies that you drove your Ferrari into work. It was just like, see, there is money in academia. Come on, kids, get out there. No, I love that game. It was of the era of the side scrollers, kind of like going back and forth between scenes. But one of the things that really stuck out to me was early on in the game, you got captured and you were in a cage with another alien who didn't speak your language or anything. You couldn't understand him, but you release him. Basically, you escape and you release him. And throughout the rest of the game, you will see him. He'll help you in several different locations, but in a lot of cases, you'll be in the foreground and he'll be in the background just kicking people's ass, or vice versa. Or you'll be crawling through a tunnel and he'll be up fighting, and vice versa. And it told a really like deep emotional story, no language, and very, very simply animated. And that game was beautiful. And it was, one guy, essentially.
Another one that's been brought up is Dungeon Master. I think that's Harvey and Raph, if you guys want to speak to how that's been an inspiration on your guys.
Well, sure. I mean, Dungeon Master was, I think I played it on the Amiga back then. And then there was another very similar game called Blood Witch, which was probably even more fun because it was co-op, and so
I think we're the only two people we've ever met who's played Blood Witch. I think
Show of hands. You got one right back here.
Yeah.
Two? All right,
You
nice.
played co-op or on your own?
On my own.
Both? Yeah. So the thing about the co-op thing was that, so it's how do you call it? Like it's not real 3D. It was like it's like on a grid, and it's one move after the other, And but the thing is, like, as you get lost with your friend, because sometimes they would force a separation, like you'd have to go right, and the other one would have to stand on another pressure pad so that you can open the doors, and together you would. But so the way to find your friend would be to hit a key that was to yell, and then the other guy on his screen would say, like, you hear a faint yell from the left or something, and so like and this way you could actually find yourself and then reunite, which was very cool. But anyway, Dungeon Master in general, it was the first game, I think, before for me actually before Underworld, where there was this super creepy atmosphere where if you could just wait around and see in the distance, like there was this mummy that was like slowly moving, approaching, it's like random, and you say, oh shit, and it's coming. And then there was this. I remember this interaction where like there was the portcullis that you could press on the button and use it against the enemy in an emergent way, really, because like portcullises are everywhere in the game, and you could open doors this way. But then like you realize that actually you could combine that with any time that an NPC would come, and then you make it a strategy, like using it to your advantage to kill NPCs. And then there was a survival aspect also, which is like. I was really eat. Yeah, you had to eat, which was really important. I think you had to eat, and then like after a while you start starving until you had a spell to just like create food or whatever, and that was like then you felt like, oh, now I leveled up, now I'm cool enough that I can make my own food.
in a weird way, Dungeon Master was like a little bit of Underworld before Underworld. It was very first-person perspective. You were there, you're starving. There was a lot of choice. You could do this thing where right at the start of the game you could kill 3 of the party members deliberately and keep one alive. And he would get all the experience points and level up faster. Not experience points, but you know what I mean, whatever the currency was. He could get all the food, and you could end up with, he had many classes then instead of just one class developed or whatever. But it also had some portal-like puzzles. There were things in the world like pressure plates and like a little field that if you threw something into it would change the direction. And so they would build puzzles out of like sending spells into a series of these fields to do things. It had that real-time, you're there-ness, where monsters are moving independent of you. It had a pervasive enemy, like later Looking Glass would make System Shock, one of my all-time favorite games, and Shodan is this sense, you have this sense of presence that she's there all the time, and it had a little bit of that. I mean, it just, like, I think you had to play it at the time in order to appreciate how much it expanded the possibilities.